like this. Hi everyone. Yay. Very happy to be live with Elly Griffiths. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your books to get us
Hi everyone, I'm really happy to be here. I'm Elly Griffiths. I'm the author of the Dr. Ruth Galloway mysteries, and there are 15 of those, starting with The Crossing Places and ending with The Last Remains, which is the last one for now, and a couple of other series, Brighton Mysteries and the Harbinder Kaur novels, which are a sort of series. And I'm here now, delighted to chat to my mate Kaz here and with the brilliant UK Crime Book Club to talk about my short stories.
And I'm here now, delighted to chat. That was me, sorry. Carry on.
I'm here to talk about my new short story collection. It's called The Man in Black, and it has, you know, some new characters and new settings, but it also has short stories about all those characters that I mentioned. So Ruth, Harbinder, Max from the Brighton Mysteries, and Justice from my Justice Jones books, which are a series I love writing, and I know Kaz likes them too. So I hope we'll talk about all those things.
We will talk about those because I absolutely adore. I was just talking to my mum on the way home from Bradford, saying that they were the books that I wanted to read when I was a kid. Like you wrote Justice Jones like too many years from when I was little, because they would have been my absolute favourite series in the entire universe when I was little. Like they're exactly the kind of stuff I used to like. And I think I kind of vicariously enjoy them loads now, knowing that I would have liked little me would have liked them.
That's such a nice thing to say. And do you know what? I think I would have really liked them too. I mean, there possibly was more of that sort of stuff around when I was young, but I did really like the Mallory Towers books, and those also Jennings and Derbyshire, which were old-fashioned even when I was young, but they were about these two boys at boarding school, and I loved them. And actually something that's always stuck with me is that Jennings and Derbyshire tried to write a crime novel, and they wanted to come up with the name of a detective, and they thought for a long time about it, and they decided that all detectives have names that have a 2-syllable first name and a 1-syllable second name, like Sherlock Holmes. So they came up with Flixton Slick Super Sleuth. And I always think about that because it's such a great name, Flixton Slick. And there's a brilliant bit. If anyone loves old school stories, look up Jennings and Derbyshire. But yeah, so I love school stories. And then I love murder mysteries. So I loved, Enid Blyton. So I think putting the two together would have been something I would have liked when I was young.
So yeah, I'm really the same. I grew up Enid Blyton and things like Chalet School.
Oh, Chalet School are great, aren't they?
Yeah.
And lots of crime writers like those. Val McDermott's a big Chalet School fan.
So yeah, I didn't realise as many people liked them. You know, it's one of those things, like, of course, as an adult, I've realised that they were liked a bit more than I thought.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, I was asked to go and speak at the Chalet School convention this year. Sadly, I couldn't because I was already committed to go to Bloody Scotland, which everyone is not an insult. It is actually called Bloody Scotland. So I couldn't go, but I would have loved to because it was a big convention. You should seek them out. But the funny thing is, when I was at HarperCollins, as I know you know, I used to be an editor, and I edited children's books. And the HarperCollins published the Chalet School, and they wanted to bring them back into like modern day. So I was the editor, so I was looking through them thinking, what should we change? Not wanting to change very much because, of course, they're of their time. But there was a brilliant bit where one of the original Chalet schoolgirls, I think it's Jo, she grows up and she has triplets. And they're all lost in the mountain. Because you remember how they were always getting lost? They always had really bad sense of direction. They were always getting lost. And they were lost in the mountains. And then to cheer them up, Jo gives all of her children a cigarette.
Oh, my God.
And I thought, maybe I'll change that bit. But, I mean, that tells you something about the times. Cheer up, kids. Have a cigarette.
I do not remember that happening in the show.
Well, look, it's in one of the later ones, but it is there. So, but Chalet School books really do, appeal, I think, to a lot of crime writers for some reason. Maybe it's the setting. Crime writers love a nice setting, but no, and also I think Enid Blyton, if you think about the famous Five and Secret Seven, I mean, they are crime novels, aren't they? They're solving a crime. They're detectives. And there's one that always stuck with me. It's called the Rillaby Fair Mystery. And it's about Scrubby, and there are a few books about these characters. I can't remember all their names. Barney is one of them. And they solve this mystery. And I'm not going to spoil the ending, but there's a really spooky scene that involves stuffed animals with glass eyes, and it's at midnight, and they go into this like dell in the woods, and there's all these animals in there with their glass eyes glinting, and it's very spooky. So that has stuck with me as a really good Enid Blyton crime novel.
There you go. I used to like her adventure series.
Yes, with Kiki the parrot, and yes, Circus of Adventure was a good one.
Yeah, they were. Well, I mean, they were all good, but
yeah, and that had a very good plot. I mean, the only thing is that she was kind of quite sneery about foreigners, and I was always aware that I was a foreigner. You know, as you all know, my real name's Domenica De Rosa, and my dad was Italian. So sometimes when they sort of sneered a bit at foreigners, that was very off-putting. But generally speaking, she had a good plot. She knew how to run a good plot.
Right, so we veered off on a tangent very quickly there.
We did. We have to not do this, right?
I was going to ask you before we talked about the Man in Black, how people have taken the end of the Ruth Galloway series, because it was very brave to end it, wasn't it? And I know I loved it, but it was like, I'm just wondering how fans have taken it, because it was that ending any series, isn't there, that fans will always have a lot of feelings about.
Yeah, and you know, in most ways, it is a really lovely thing that people. If people really take to your characters, and if they love them and they don't want the books to end, and I hope I'll never not see that as a compliment, because it really is a compliment when people, you know, say, oh, I don't want them to end, I want them to keep on, and that is a compliment. But of course, from the writer's point of view, I felt that they couldn't keep going on forever, particularly because there is a kind of will they won't they love story in them between Ruth and Nelson. I feel you do run the risk of that becoming forced if you keep them apart for no particular reason, really, the end. So I felt I had to solve that. And there are no spoilers here, so I know people already have got there. So I did feel I had to do that. And I did feel, I think, I wanted a bit of a break. There are 15 Ruth books, and I wrote them over 15 years. And I wrote them through all sorts of things going on in my life. You know, my children growing up, going to university, leaving home, my mum getting ill and dying. Through all that, I still wrote a book every year. So I did feel like I probably did need a bit of a break from them and a chance to do something else. And there were people who said they would never forgive me, and that they really, somebody recently said, I feel tremendous malice towards you. And I thought that was quite horrible, really. It's quite a horrible thing to hear. I did say to her, that's not a nice thing to hear. And she said, oh, I don't care. And I thought, okay, then. And actually I said to her, well, you wouldn't want me to write them if I didn't feel, you know, if I didn't feel enthused about them. And she said, oh, I wouldn't mind. So I said, oh, well, maybe you'll like my next book. And she said, I know I won't. So I said, okay, bye. But generally speaking, I think people have understood. And what has helped really is that people really liked The Last Remains. It's been my best received book, I think, of all the books. So I hope people thought that I tied up the loose ends in a good way. So I think that has helped really. And also I have always said it's only the last for now. I'm not saying I'll never write another one, but I am saying I want a bit of a break. And as you know, I've got something else coming up. So I think mostly people have understood, even if they're a bit cross with me at the time.
Yeah, someone on YouTube said that they miss Ruth and Nelson, but no malice. So
oh, that's good. That's nice.
Pam Sutherwood has said, oh no, I was sad, but she understood your reasons.
Oh, well, you see, I think that's lovely. Thank you. And I think most people did feel like that. And I would be so awful, wouldn't it, I think, if, you know, if they started to kind of go downhill a bit and people then started to sort of comment, oh, they're not as good as they were at the beginning. And I think you do run the risk of that with a long series. And also because I'd taken the choice early on to let my characters age in real time. So they are getting older and they're having to make life decisions too. So I think there is it is a time for a bit of a break. But of course, there is a Ruth and Nelson story in here. So
there is for anyone who misses it. But I think there is like, I mean, for any, like, there's lots of series I know and I've loved that have ended. And you kind of do always feel a bit sad. But I think sometimes making the choice to end them when, like you said, they're still strong and you've tied it up neatly and nicely, is like quite a brave choice because...
Oh, well, thank you. I guess I thought that I wanted to give that ending so that whatever happened to me or anything, there would be that ending there that I hoped was satisfying, you know, and tied up from an ending of that sort of chapter of Ruth's life and maybe of my life too. So I'm very glad that that people did seem to like that ending, and it give me a chance. I loved writing the book, but it gave me a chance to pick up a few loose ends that were there from the previous book. So I think if you read all of them, there was a little bit of a few kind of Easter eggs in that last book that did tie things up. So yeah, on the whole, people have been very nice, and of course, it's a big compliment, and I really feel the same of series end that I love. But I'm a great rereader, so I suppose I'm always happy to go back to the beginning and reread a whole series.
Yeah, me too. I think the thing, anyone who feels a bit sad about it though needs to go and read this, The Man in Black, because I felt sad about Justice ending as well. But, the stories in this are like just so full of joy, and like they're all so exciting and different and interesting, and even the ones where you've got new characters are like brilliant. And you're reading this going, there's going to be so many more new books from you that are going to be fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much, Kaz. That's a lovely thing to say. And I have to say, that was one of the big pleasures of this book, was writing about what Justice would do grown up, and that was a really fun story to write. And also thinking what, how did Max Mephisto start out? What was he like as a young performer? What was he like as a young magician? So I got to write about that. And yes, to go back to Ruth and Nelson. And I think I felt a tiny bit nervous going back, thinking because, well, I'm not going to say any spoilers, but of course their situation's a bit different now. So writing about them in the new situation, but actually it just was a lot of fun, I have to say.
They were, and then you've got like Harbinder's kind of first day on the job, haven't you? In there as well, which was quite a nice one.
I really wanted to write about the first time she met Neil, who is her sort of fellow police officer, with whom she finds him very annoying at times, but I think she also has a pretty deep friendship as well. And I just wanted to show how that started. So yeah, that was a fun one to write too, and it involved a missing dog, which is always fun to write about.
It is, yeah. And the joy of her, like there was like the thing where she's taking a lunch from her mum, and she's a bit embarrassed about it and stuff. That's quite.
Yeah, and the sort of, her mum is Indian. She's British Indian family, and she has this amazingly lovely lunch in a tiffin box of wonderful Indian delicacies. And possibly the inspiration for that slightly was Vaseem Khan, whose wife every day makes him a fantastic lunch full of Indian delicacies. Wow. So, and I remember when I was talking to him, he was saying that first his colleagues were sort of laughing about that. But then they all wanted some because they were so nice. So possibly that was slightly the inspiration for that.
I'm just reading down the comments we've got so far. Patsy said that the Chalet School books always made her want to go to boarding school.
Yes. I think those boarding school books, that they made us all want to go to boarding school, but I'm pretty sure I would have hated it. But one of my sisters was mad keen to go. And honestly, I'm pretty sure she would really have hated it. She's a real free spirit. She wouldn't have liked it at all.
Yeah, I was mad keen to go. And never went. Sarah's saying that it's not the same as in the book. She went to one for 11 years.
Oh, interesting. Well, thank you for telling us that, Sarah. I think we need to know the truth, really. And my mum went to boarding school, so she is the inspiration, as I think I've said before, for Justice in the Justice books, and she really hated it. So, and I think in a way, my mum would have loved one of the teachers to be murdered, and she could solve the crime. So maybe I'm just doing this for my mum.
Yeah, one of the reasons my parents came out of the army was so that my brother didn't go to boarding school.
Oh, I see. Well, I think that was really good of them, really, thinking of him, because I don't think that, and especially maybe if you're in the army as well and maybe moving around a bit, I don't think it's easy.
No. Tony said he's got the set of 10 Ruth. He bought a set of 10 Ruth Galloway books.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's great. Enjoy them all. There's another 5 after that.
Yeah, he's not started yet, but there are people telling him he's got a treat ahead.
Oh, that's great to hear. Oh, good. And also, I love it when people starting at the beginning, because you're not getting cross with me for ending it. So you've got a bit of writing, a bit of reading to get through.
But it's people who I know we talked about our friend Lynn, haven't we, before? Who's over,
dear Lynn, yes,
over from California at the moment, and she was at King Arthur's burial place the other day, and I couldn't help wondering if it was a little bit inspired by you.
Oh,
is it?
Maybe, yeah. Lynn is on this amazing. She's listening in, but she's on this amazing British tour at the moment, and she's going to come and stay with us in Brighton.
Ooh.
So I'm looking forward to showing her around Brighton and showing her a few of the old the spots that might have come into the books. And I know I think she's in Yarmouth, so she's done Yarmouth. Well, she's done the most amazing tour. Every time I look on Facebook, she's somewhere else. But looking forward to having you, Lynn.
I know, I'm quite jealous. I'm like watching her little adventures around, going like, this is amazing.
And it's the sort of thing you don't do in the country you live in, isn't it? To go on that sort of tour. And actually, I'd really love to do that.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun to go and see literary places, isn't it? She was been to Jamaica Inn as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the Cornish bit of her journey was wouldn't it be good to just do a literary tour of Britain? It would be really. When my book about Norfolk came out, we did this little bus tour to celebrate around Norfolk. And it was so much fun. And I did think I'd like to just do a longer tour and so not just do my books, but, do all sorts of literary tours. Yes, it would be great to go to Jamaica Inn and to go up to Yorkshire and sort of track the Brontes. And yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, have you been to Haworth? It's lovely up there, isn't it?
I have been to Haworth, yeah, and such a one of the most evocative places I've ever been to. Of course, it's not far from you, is it? And I think the first time I went there, we arrived in just the best moments, sort of twilight, and all the rooks were cawing from the trees, and just incredible.
Yeah.
Have you been to? There's a lovely bookshop there called Wave of Nostalgia. Have you been there?
I have. I really like Haworth.
Yeah, me too.
It was quite exciting to go there.
Yeah.
Not yet walked up to Wuthering Heights, which I really need to do.
We did do that the first time we went. Andy and I walked up there. It's quite a long wuthering walk, but so beautiful and so amazing.
Because that is like my favourite book of all time is Wuthering Heights, so I do need to do it.
It is amazing, but I recently, so my kids, I've got grown-up children, they went to Haworth because they've got a good friend who lives in Leeds. So they went to see her and they went to Haworth and they decided to read all the Bronte books. And I thought, well, I haven't read them all. I love Wuthering Heights, I love Jane Eyre. And recently I read Tenant of Wildfell Hall for the first time. Such an amazing book, incredible depiction of domestic violence and alcoholism, and just felt very modern. So I now think I need to reread all of those.
Yeah, it's very ahead of its time, wasn't it?
So ahead of its time. And just the character of Helen Graham, and there is a character called Helen Graham in my new book that's coming out next year, sort of a bit inspired by her.
Donna has said she can't wait for the new series. What you were talking about this when I saw you in Leeds a little bit, the new series.
Yeah, well, so the new series, the first book's out in February, and it's called The Frozen People. And it's about a detective called Elly Dawson, and she lives in East London, lives and works in the East End of London. And she works for Cold Case Unit. And they joke that their cases are so cold that they're frozen. But actually, the reason they're so old is because they routinely go back in time to solve them. So the team go back in time, they time travel. But until recently, they've only time traveled a couple of years. But the reason they can time travel is they have on their sort of books a really brilliant Italian physicist called Serafina Pellegrini, and she has worked out how to time travel. But they then are asked, Elly is asked to go back to 1850 to the Victorian times, much further than they've been before. And they're asked by somebody very high up in government. But it's also the same high up a Conservative MP that her son Finn works for. So there's obviously something going on there. So Elly goes back in time, and then she finds herself stuck there and unable to come back to Finn's aid when he's charged with murder.
Ooh.
So it's really, I'll just show you of it. This is what the cover looks like right there.
Oh, amazing.
So it is a detective story, but it does have this sort of time travel element, which I hope won't put people off who don't like time travel, because I think like anything, I think it's all about the characters. If you think about Ashes to Ashes, I love that series, but I don't remember why or how they time travel. Just that there were some amazing characters, like the detective Gene Hunt in the 70s. So I hope it's the characters, and I had wonderful fun writing about this place where she ends up in 1850, which is a house full of artists and artist models and really sort of on the fringes of society. So I hope people will enjoy reading it. Out in February 2025.
What was it like? I mean, obviously you're going to have to go back and get all the historical facts right for like 18.
Yeah, and which I really liked, because I really love research. And 100 years ago, I did a master's in Victorian fiction, so I've always liked that era, really. And of course, it comes across in all my writing, I think. But it was what I really enjoyed finding out was just those little facts. Like when you think about it, okay, so you wake up in 1850. Well, what do you do? You know, how do you wash? How do you dress? What do you put on first? How do you go to the loo? Well, of course, the answer to that is quite horrible, but you need to know, don't you? What would you have for breakfast? How would you do your washing? How would you? All those things I just found really fascinating, and they were things that took the longest time to research, but I'm so glad I did, because I learned so many really interesting things and about sort of woman's life and what was it like to wear those petticoats and to wear a corset, and what, the answer is apparently not as uncomfortable as you think. But all those things was just so very interesting. And what do you do? One of the characters in it is teetotal. So what do you drink? What would you drink during the day? You know, if you can't drink your ale with breakfast, which they still did. So I just loved all those little details. I found them really interesting.
There is. I was reading a book about Jane Austen recently, a Lucy Worsley one. And it's like when they'd had a baby, they often had a drink that was like a pint of gin. And
yes.
Oh my God.
And stout, you know, those are meant to be really good for you. But I remember things like, we're talking about cigarettes again for some reason. I remember my grandmother, who wasn't a Victorian, but wasn't far off. She thought that, because she was a nurse, that she thought that when she came away from the sickbed, she had a cigarette, it would get rid of the germs. So, you know, some of the things they thought were good for them were really not so good for them.
No, I remember my mum saying, I think when she was having my brother, that they used to give them stout in the hospital.
Yeah, it was meant to be really good for the milk, I think, to come through. And yeah, so things have changed a little bit.
Just a bit.
But did she like the stout? It's not a great drink, is it? I don't think.
No, I don't think she's a mad fan of it. Because she's not also like, she had my brother up here, and I think she'd only just moved north as well.
Oh well, yes, because I know that she's from Suffolk, isn't she, originally? So
yeah,
she was going to that area that people like me who live in the south think of as the north.
Yes, the north, which is a lovely place to be.
It really is lovely, really incredibly beautiful. This year in February, I did a little tour, and I was in Carlisle, and I got the train to Leeds, and then I saw you guys in Leeds. But that train line across the Dales is so beautiful.
It's you've got a story in Leeds in the book as well, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. Well, so Max Mephisto is in Leeds in the book, performing in Leeds. And partly that's because one of the inspirations for Max is my granddad, Dennis Laws, who was a comedian, but he lived in Leeds. He lived in Headingley, and he absolutely loved Leeds. Although he was originally born in Hastings, that was where he ended up. And it was partly because it was a terrific theatrical scene all around there. And lots of those amazing theatres that showed reviews. And I think I made up the theatre in the book, but it was very that you know, the north, what was a place where a lot of the performers went to do that sort of variety performance. So I thought I had to set it in Leeds. And he had a few stories about landlords and landladies the story in the book, again, not to give anything away, about the passage between the theatres was meant to be true. And he claimed that he saw a woman disappear that way and come up in a different theatre. So that was the inspiration for that story. I think it's Max Mephisto and the Disappearing Act, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can. I know it's a made-up theatre, but
there are quite a few that it could be.
There are quite a few that it could be, isn't there? Because we do have some really old theatres and
really old
and things, and you can still see the old like variety posters.
I went, in fact, after I'd done the event in Waterstones, Leeds, I went with a friend to a really nice pub in Leeds, and I can't remember the name of it now. And it had all the variety posters around it, and it was just, yeah. And it was just fantastic.
Yeah, because it's next to the City Varieties.
Yeah, there's that big sign across the arch, isn't there? In the alleyway, there's that big sign there. Yeah, and you felt like going down that archway. You could go back in time. You really could.
You could, and the theatre's still really old and lovely inside.
That's wonderful. Where we're doing the Hippodrome in Brighton, that is another one of those beautiful old Frank Matcham theatres, and I think it's great if they can be brought back.
I like Max appears a couple of times in the stories, doesn't he?
He does. There's a story right at the end. It's called Ruth Galloway and the Ghost of Max Mephisto, and it's this story where you get the only story I think you ever get where you get Ruth and Nelson and Harbinder and Max in the same story,
which must have been quite hard to figure out how to do.
Well, yeah, given the timings, it is quite hard. And also, I think you noticed that when Justice is making a phone call in a public call box outside the Dominion Theatre in London, she sees posters for Max Mephisto. So they sort of cross over a little bit, because Justice is in this story 21. It's just after the war, and of course, Max is still performing. So. Yeah, so there are a few crossovers. It's a shame in a way I can't get them all to be the same age together, but unfortunately I can't.
So we've got the Frozen people coming out next year. Is there going to be more Harbinder books? Because that was like a series that wasn't ever meant to be a series, wasn't it?
No, exactly right. Yes, I wrote the Stranger Diaries, and I thought it was a one-off. You know, it was a kind of gothic story, and in the short story collection, The Man in Black, you get that short story that's in there called The Stranger. So yeah, it was, and it's just Harbinder was the detective who came in to solve the crime. But I really liked writing about her, and I felt I wanted to bring him into other stories. So it's more been like she comes into the stories than it being a series about her, if that makes any sense at all. So she comes in and solves the crime in the postscript murders, then Bleeding Heart Yards, kind of about her going to London. But in The Last Word, the book that's out in paperback next week, she again helps her friends solve a crime. So I think there might be at least one more book about Harbinder.
That's good to hear. One more book. Then what would you do after that? Because you've kind of bought out at least 2 books a year, haven't you, most years?
Yeah.
Because there's often been a Max book and a Ruth book, or a Harbinder and a Ruth, hasn't there?
Yeah, that's right. That's why at my incredibly youthful age, I've already written 32 Ruth Galloway books, you know, and I think I have written 32 books in 15 years. I think that's how long it's taken. So that's quite a pace, really. So I now possibly will go to writing 1 book a year, I think, because there's so much research required for the Frozen people and the sequel to that, which hope will come out the year after. So I'm slowing down a little bit, but I've got ideas for more books, definitely, and more series. So we'll see where that goes.
I'm intrigued as to whether you could build. You love Bruce Springsteen, right? I'm wondering if you could build him into one of your books.
Oh yeah, I do love Bruce Springsteen. I'm going to see him on the 25th of this month, so cannot wait. Yeah, that's a challenge, isn't it? Of course, Ruth loves Bruce. Hard to say that. Ruth loves Bruce as well. So possibly there could be a story about Ruth. You've given me a good idea there. Definitely a short story about Ruth going to a Bruce concert.
Yeah, she would.
Harbinder might be there as well. Yeah.
Dragging Nelson along.
Yeah, she would drag Nelson along, and he'd be hoping for Frank Sinatra, and he would get Bruce Springsteen. So, yeah, that would be. Or maybe Kate really wants to go. Anyhow, that's a good thought, Gaz. Yeah, got that in my head now.
Yeah, it's good time to sort of start introducing them when they're like teenagers, I think.
Yes. And I think it might be a time maybe she really wants to go. Ruth obviously goes with her because she's due to go. Oh, you can see Pip there in the background. I don't know if you can see him. Hello, Pip. Yeah, so maybe they go together. Maybe they get separated. Maybe something happens. Good idea.
You said you're going to. Oh, my dad's saying The Man in Black is a great read.
Oh, thanks, David. I'm so glad you're enjoying it.
Very happy.
Good, good.
He's even more happy now I've returned it. I whizzed it off his book pile the other day to read. I was like, I'm remembering Ellie. I need to borrow it.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you've got it. I should have sent you one, but I'm so glad you've got it and that you're enjoying it.
So I've returned it now, and you can read it.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it's all good.
Well, it's sharing books is good. We all know that.
Well, no, I was using you as an example the other day because my dad is terrible. He's watching this, and I don't care. Giving spoilers away when you read things.
Ah.
So my mum's a big fan of your books too, and we do buy them often in like 2 versions. So we'll buy the Kindle version and the hardback version.
Oh, that's
and then
nice.
everyone can read them all at the same time.
Oh, I love to think the Gilchrists are reading my books at the same time. That's so nice.
And then you can't get spoilers.
Yes, of course. Yes, I often my daughter Juliet and I often read the same books at the same time, and that's really good, isn't it? And I always enjoy it when she and Alex, my son, when they I've read a book of mine. I always really enjoy talking about it with them. But yes, because the only thing about Kindle is you don't get that bit where a sort of book is passed around the family. And I remember that growing up when I've got 2 sisters, and my sisters and my mum, we were all really keen readers. And there would be a book that was sort of passed around all of us. You know, I remember that with To Kill a Mockingbird, that my sisters, because they're older, had read it first. And me just having a totally different idea of it, seeing them reading it, talking about it. And then when I got it, it was so exciting because it was kind of my turn to read it. And I loved it, but it wasn't at all what I expected.
No, they often are. And we used to do it when we lived abroad, like buy the biggest books we could find at the airport.
Yes.
So we'll read them and then pass them around the family, like while you were abroad.
Yes, I sort of miss that, don't you, now, because you have Kindle, so you're never going to run out of a book. I mean, I still like physical books, but I do have a Kindle for holidays. But I remember certain holidays where I'd run out of my own books, and I have to read the books that Andy had brought, and they would be something like Wilbur Smith or something. And I would never have read those otherwise. But actually, I love them. You know, they tended to be like big, thick tomes. And so I sort of miss that in a way, because now you never get the thing where you don't choose the book, but you think, oh, I'll read this, because we're all readers, aren't we? And we get panicky if we can't read. Oh, I'll pick this up and I'll read this. This might not be what I'd normally read, but I'm going to read it all. And yeah, that's quite an exciting thing.
So we started talking about Justice, didn't we? And you got her grown up in the book and being a detective, which is just exactly what Justice would be doing when she was grown up. Will you ever return to the series, or maybe write a different kids series?
I don't know. I had always thought that there would just be the 4 Justice books, and that would take the story up to the war, because that's kind of where I wanted to leave it. But I really enjoyed writing about her as an adult. So I wonder if there's a bit in there that might go on to be a longer book, because I really enjoyed it, and it's fun because, of course, Justice was at school. And she has a kind of gang of school friends who I really find quite interesting. And I won't say anything here, but you do find out in the short story what happens to them all after school. And I really had fun doing that. But I think there's quite a bit of there's quite a bit of mileage in a group of young women just after the war, when the world was changing, but it wasn't changing that much. And for women, sometimes it went a bit back from them having sort of jobs like, you know, working in factories and working on the buses, and then they had to sort of go back to everyday life. So I wonder if there's a bit of leeway, a bit of mileage in that. So I'm not ruling out a full-length book about Justice and Friends.
My dad says the early Wilbur Smith books were fab.
Yeah, they really were, weren't they? I'm glad and I met Wilbur Smith because very first time I was invited to a Gerald's literary lunch. Gerald's is a big department store in Norwich, and they had these amazing literary lunches, and they were at Norwich Football Club and catered by Delia Smith, which was really cool.
Which is the most Norfolk thing ever, isn't it?
It could not be more Norfolk if it tried. Yeah, Norfolk, you know, the Canaries, Delia Smith. And the first one I went to, and I'd only written one book then, one crime novel. the other guest was Will Smith, and he was very kind to me. And his wife bought my book, and they were very, very nice. So I was then quite grateful that I was able to talk to him knowledgeably, or not very knowledgeably, about having read a couple of his books. But I think David's right; the early ones are the best. But the continuation ones, now written by someone else, they're really good. I can't remember his name, Edwin something or other, but they're very good.
Are they?
Yeah.
I've read some of the early ones, but not for a long
the
time.
Egyptian ones went a bit crazy, I think, after a while.
Yeah, I've read the first couple of the Egyptian ones. I don't think I've read more than that.
No, I think they, but writing I obviously got an Egyptian story myself in the new collection, so I do think about them a bit when I was writing that.
Yeah, there's a brilliant that I love that story because it's all kind of the fault of Cathbad, isn't it?
Well, everything is really the fault of Cathbad, and Nelson says in the story that even in Egypt, Cathbad can make trouble for them and can make their lives difficult. So it was super fun to write. I mean, obviously in the footsteps of Agatha Christie, but Andy and I had done that. We'd had a holiday in Egypt, and we had done that Nile cruise, so it was very fresh in my mind. And I even thought, as we were going down the Nile and looking at the people with us on the boat, I'm going to write a story about this, though none of our, obviously it's all completely made up, but it was so fun to write.
Did they do that thing in the book on your cruise where, like you did in the story, where they gave you like an Egyptian name?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. And so we were all, I think it was a clever way of our guide to differentiate between us. At the very first day, he gave us all an Egyptian god, and Andy and I were Ruth and Nelson, the ones they're given. I can't remember the earth and the sky. I can't quite remember their names now, but Nut and Gleb or something. Anyhow, those were our ones. And there was a kind of slightly mysterious guy who was given Ra, which is, the sun god, and you'll see in the book that that's also a bit mysterious in this. So yeah, it was quite a good way as a writer for me to quickly introduce you to all the characters, because only a short story, but there are quite a few characters because all the characters on the cruise in them. So to give you their names, to give you their god, and of course there are a few clues in there as well. So that was quite fun. Yeah, they did do that. And there was a very glamorous Turkish woman, lovely woman called Daphne, and she was given the goddess of moisture and sweat. And she did say, I really wish I had a nicer god. So I did use that in the story.
Mills, who's watching this, she's a lovely, very supportive of authors. She said, kind people are incredible. She still remembers her heart just about stopping when you replied to a tweet of hers.
Oh, wow, that's so nice. Oh, well, that's lovely. And thank you for your support. And it's really lovely for authors when we see a tweet addressed to us. So I do always try and reply. So thank you.
I think it's, there is, like, the crime community in general is really friendly and nice, isn't it? And I think there is that thing. You were one of the first authors I remember meeting who was just really friendly and welcoming and chatty and, happy to chat about your books. As an adult, and I think it's one of the things that sort of probably inspired both me and my dad to be a bit more involved in the book community.
Well, that's lovely to think. That might just, but I will never forget meeting you, and I know I've told the story before, because I was at Leeds Waterstones, not at all well known, signing books, and Waterstones did that a bit then. They just give you a table and say, look, sign, you can sign for anyone, and nobody came in, nobody wanted their book signed, and then like a mirage, there was you and David and Linda, your parents, and you turned up and you came over and you said, oh, we really like your books, and it was so lovely. It was and I think it was only people who came over all day, but it was absolutely worth it to meet you all. So and I think it's true that I hope it's true anyhow, the crime writing community is a welcoming place, and other crime writers, we're all pretty close and we're all good friends. As you know, I'm really good friends with William Shaw and Leslie Thompson, but also lots of others. But I think more of it is that because we're all readers as well, aren't we? We're all booky people, And I think that's why we have that in common. And we're all the same. We all love reading. We all love stories. We all get enthusiastic about books. So I think that's what makes the UK Crime Book Club so fun. You every day there's somebody saying, "Oh, I found this great new writer," or "Does anyone else think this about?" And it's just a nice community. And I have to say, you and the admins do a wonderful job keeping it nice, which does take a bit of work sometimes. But generally speaking, it's very good humoured and really nice. And I've often thought that maybe reading a crime novel, it's quite an active sort of reading, isn't it? You don't just read it because you are engaged with it and you're trying to work it out. And in doing so, you are engaging with the author. You're really trying to read their mind, aren't you? Thinking, "Oh, I know, because she often does that. So that might be a clue, blah, blah, blah." And I know I do that when I'm reading books. Like I'm reading a book of Leslie's and I think, "Oh, I know Leslie likes that. So is that a clue? Does she mean that? Or is it a double bluff?" So and I think because we're so engaged with each other, I think that's why there seems to be no barrier between readers and writers in the crime community. That seems that way to me anyhow.
But I do feel like, especially people like you and William and Leslie are very supportive of other authors. You do the crime festival in Shoreham, don't you, that helps other authors. William helps so many people, doesn't he?
Oh, William really is so lovely and so fantastic. And yes, and he, when lockdown came, we were to go online. I mean, I know he helped you guys go online. He helped Standing Bookshops go online. So he really has got a lot of people who are grateful to him. But yeah, I think we always do try and boost up new writers. And, I remember when I read Joe Callahan's book In the Blink of an Eye, first, and I read a proof of it. I was telling everyone how good this book was, because you get somebody good on the scene and you just think, wow, this is brilliant. And I'm very happy to see, I think it won the Dagger the other night, the debut Dagger. Really happy to see other people saying that. Janice Hallett as well, when I first read that, the Appeal, thinking, "Oh, this is so fun. This is a great new voice on the scene." So I think we do try and boost each other up, I think. And sometimes I think also we feel a bit like we need to support each other, because there's still a little bit of snobbery about crime fiction. And, for example, we don't get invited to literary festivals. I've been invited to Hay twice. Both times it's been great. But there are hardly any crime writers there. I think it was me and McHerron the year I was there. I've never been invited to the Brighton Festival, so I think we sort of feel a bit we have to boost each other in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there aren't that many literary festivals that have a lot of genre stuff, is there?
No, really, genre fiction does. It's literary fiction or non-fiction is the big thing. I did the Cambridge Festival this year, the Bath Festival. So some are great, but I mean, I think there is still a little bit of snobbery about genre fiction. So so I think we need to support each other a bit.
Although I went to Bradford Lit Fest, every year has a whole crime weekend.
Oh, and that's just happened, isn't it?
Yeah. I went, well, it's on its last day today. And that has quite a range of genre stuff, like other genres as well.
And is it at that beautiful Waterstones in Bradford?
No, it's like around the city.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's in like the city hall, in hotels. It's like in all different, because they have so many different events on.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Things.
Paul Burston was there. I think he was tweeting about being there. But yeah, that sounds great. Well, I think the North is pretty good at that, really. Well, obviously the big crime writing festival is in Yorkshire, isn't it? It's at Harrogate. So possibly just in the South, we need to be a bit better about that.
Well, they've got you now doing Shoreham.
Yeah, yes, William and I doing this crime fiction day on 19th of October in Shoreham. So anyone who's around the Shoreham area, look out for. We've got a great program, really good program coming up.
What were you doing at Bloody Scotland? You mentioned that you're going there.
Yes, I'm going there in September, and I'm doing In Conversation with Peter James, which should be really fun. Peter's a huge name in crime fiction, but another Brighton writer. I know him quite well, so I think it's just going to be really fun. He's a really nice guy, very, very funny. So, and also a little bit, you never quite know what he's going to say, which I think makes for a fun chat, really. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that's on the 13th of September, Bloody Scotland. Bloody Scotland's at Stirling, and which is just the most beautiful town. So I think everyone loves going there, because one year they did a ghost tour of Stirling and it was so spooky and brilliant. So I'd love to do something else. So that's in September.
going back to you talking about Joe Callahan's book, I'm thinking with the Frozen People coming out and it having a bit of a time travel aspect. There's Joe Callahan's books, isn't there? I really like Sarah Moorhead. She writes books that are quite in the vein of Philip K. Dick, but crime fiction.
Right, great, yes.
Do you think there's a bit more of a kind of wanting to go back to that exploration of, like a little bit of science fiction, but in crime?
I do think so. I think it is a bit of a move. And I've had this idea for a while, and then I thought I've got to do it because I think otherwise other people are going to do it, because I think there is a bit of a move towards speculative fiction, really. There's Joe Turt and Stu Turton, Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. So that was speculative fiction. I think he's gone back to that with his new one. So I think there's a little bit more of this, and I haven't read The Ministry of Time just because I was worried that it was a similar sort of thing to mine, so I don't want to read it and be influenced. But so you get books like that coming out, don't you? So I think there is a bit of a move towards speculative fiction, which is quite interesting, because you can, what I've always loved about science fiction is that you can tackle quite big ideas in it, which I find very interesting.
Well, it's got a whole history of tackling quite big ideas, hasn't it? Even like Star Trek and things was quite groundbreaking in like a lot of things that it did.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, Star Trek was really quite an incredible series, wasn't it? And the idea of sort of, peace and having a diverse crew on the ship was our first multiracial kiss was on the was on the Starship Enterprise, wasn't it? So I mean, on TV, not in life, obviously. But yeah, it was kind of groundbreaking and great. I loved Star Trek when I was young. Never quite understood why Captain Kirk had to take his top off quite as much as he did whenever he found an alien life, which usually had a rather attractive alien woman there. He always had to sort of take his top off. So yes, it was it was kind of groundbreaking. But also, if you think of Isaac Asimov, he was already thinking, well, there's a real link between him and Joe Callahan's book, which is about, those who haven't read it, read it. It's about an AI detective, about hologram, a detective who's a hologram. But he was already there, wasn't he, with iRobot? And he was already there thinking about how would we work with robots? And I always think it's very interesting that Isaac Asimov assumed that the first thing we would do was make it impossible for a robot to harm a human. But we didn't do that. So perhaps we should.
Perhaps we should. Yeah, I'm a science teacher, so I do like a bit of science.
I know, and you love sci-fi, don't you, as well?
I do absolutely love it. 100%. Like, I'm happy. So your book, like the minute you were like, I've written one with a bit of time travel in, I was just like, I'm sold. I'm there. Like,
I was so pleased because you messaged me and said that, and I was so pleased because, of course, you are going to get some people thinking, well, I don't like that. I don't like sci-fi. I don't want that element in it. So it was really lovely that you said that. But I think people shouldn't be scared of the time of the sort of time travel element of it, because I honestly think that if you like Ruth, then you're like Elly. I do think so. They're not the same character, but they're similar. So I think you will like her.
There's a new forensic archaeologist in your stories, isn't there, who was brilliant. I think that story with her in might be one of my favourites in there.
Oh, wow, articulation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you liked that one. Yeah, well, that was quite a fun one to write, and it's one of my darker stories, I think, in a way. So I'm really glad you liked that one. William Shaw read the book recently, and he was really sweet about it. That was his favourite too.
He's got good taste, William.
He has got good taste. Somebody, he should write a book. He's written many books, guys. And actually his latest, The Wild Swimmers, I thought was absolutely fantastic.
It was, wasn't it?
Really good.
Yeah, really, really good. That whole, like, the scene where they walk and there's the statue in the water.
Oh yeah, and it starts, and you think, isn't it? So, and just his first line, he's the king of first lines, really, because if she'd only gone left instead of right, she would have been the one to find the body. I mean, what a way to start. I mean, really, you're right in there.
Yeah, it's brilliant. How you what have they got coming up? Can you, William and Leslie, got any more?
So I know they're both working on things, and I think William's going to announce soon what he's doing next, which will be really exciting. But of course, Wild Swim has only just come out, really. But he's always working on the next thing, and I know Leslie's working on the next book. So I think there's look out for announcements from those two quite soon.
Excellent, we will, because that's another.
Leslie's just got a new dog though, so that is taking up a bit of her time. So if he's watching, hi Roman, it's Auntie Dom here.
Oh, now we need pictures of Leslie's new dog.
We do. Leslie, send us pictures of Roman, because I have told her that I have to be his favourite auntie. So I'm working on it. He's really gorgeous. He's really sweet.
And quite frankly, just you need puppy pictures.
We do. Puppy pictures, cat and dog pictures. I'm there for that content. And if I look down my Instagram feed, I mainly follow things about animals or horse. I'm a big horse fan, so I love any sort of place for retired Shire horses or something. I'm in there wanting to follow your content. So I do love any animal pictures. I'm happy for it. I love it sometimes on the UK Crime Book Group. People just send pictures of their animals, don't they? And I love that.
Yeah, no, I'm here for it. I love that.
Yeah,
I always tell the kids when I do parents' evening, like Parents' Day on we do it online. I'm like, if I meet your pet, you get extra bonus good comments. Like, down for meeting anyone's pets. Like, it's
oh, that's really funny.
We had a hedgehog in school last week though. That was brilliant.
What, is somebody's pet, or did it just wander in? Or
no, it's like a hedgehog rescue lady came in to visit, and she put a hedgehog with her.
Oh, that's so lovely. I think those people so my daughter works for the Bat Conservation Trust, and there are these people who spend their life saving bats. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's not like it's inspiring, isn't it, when people give up time?
It's really inspiring, yeah, and they do it in such a way as they can return them into nature, and they're not turning them into pets and things, and it's really wonderful. It is really wonderful that you read awful things about people's behaviour to animals, but there are also some really wonderful things. A couple of weeks ago, I did an event at Red Wings Horse Sanctuary in Norfolk, and just to be there for the day, it was just amazing to see the rescued horses and donkeys, and I could have stayed there forever. Really, it was just and just these people who really give their lives to saving these horses, who come have some awful backstories, but they're also happy there. It's so lovely.
I think you've written about them, and you've definitely mentioned them.
Well noticed.
I'm sure they've cropped up in at least like a book.
They have. They've cropped up in a few Ruth books. So Ruth goes there with Kate, with her daughter Kate. Kate adopts a donkey, which is the same donkey that I have adopted, called Wiggins. And I saw him when I was there, and very cute he was too. Yes, so they do pop up a few times. I like to give them a little bit of a plug. Not that they probably need me, but it's an amazing charity, and it's free to go. If you go there, you can spend the day there. It's absolutely free, and children love it, and you can just go around and see the horses and things. But they can also do with donations as well. They're a really fantastic charity. They've got two centres, one in Essex and one in Norfolk.
Pam saying, talking about the detective sci-fi mix, she likes the Rivers of London books.
Oh yeah, Ben Aronovich. Yeah, I like those too. Yes, and there's that the element there, and the sort of going down through the layers of London, even with the Nikki French books, the Frida Klein books. They have that theme of following the hidden rivers in London, don't they? So yeah, there's a few books definitely that Simon Toyne, fellow Brighton author, his Solomon Creed books as well. They have a little element of that in.
Yeah, I love the Rivers of London books.
Yeah, me too.
Huge fan. I really want him to write a novella with Molly as the main character.
Oh yeah, that would be so good.
Yeah, like I keep hassling you for a Cathbad one.
The Cathbad one, yeah, definitely. Well, I haven't ruled that out. I haven't ruled out a Cathbad prequel book. That could happen. I wrote a little Cathbad short story that's in the front of, it's actually in the back of it, because there's some spoilers in it, of the special edition of The Crossing Places. So Cathbad's quite a hard character to write about, but definitely he's also quite mysterious, and he has this backstory that keeps on giving, and it comes into the short story that I've written about them. So yeah. Definitely, I think there could be a Cathbad prequel somewhere.
Yeah, kind of. It sort of has a rough end to the series, doesn't he? He has like a bit of a rocky road in the last few books.
He does. He has quite a difficult. He gets COVID and then he has long COVID, which I sort of wanted to write about because I know it's a real thing and people are busy trying to say it's not, but I know it is. So I wanted to have that in the book, really. So yeah, he goes through the mill, but well, spoiler alert, this is a spoiler. He's fine at the end of it.
Yeah.
And has the epilogue for The Last Remains is Cuthbert being happy.
Which is good.
I'm good. I like him to be happy.
I
wanted to kill him. At one point, I'd planned to kill him. Not wanted to, but that was the plan in an earlier book, but I just couldn't do it. So he lived to fight another day.
This is excellent because I would have been very sad.
And that's in Dying For, which I think is your dad's favourite book. So I wouldn't have wanted to ruin that one by having a...
No, that is my dad's favourite book. Right, Steve Munoz is watching, apparently.
Oh, wow. Hello, Steve.
Our American members who were
from California as well, isn't he? I think. Oh,
hi, you've got quite a California following, haven't you?
Well, it's so lovely, and I was in California last year, actually, in San Diego, and I went whale watching with Lynn, so it was really good fun.
It must be nice when you've got things like that, when you've got friends that you've met through the books, like Lynn, and you can go, when you go to sort of their homes, and then you can sort of go and do things like that.
Isn't it nice? And books have given us new friends. And I never thought that in my life that I would make so many new friends at this point in my life, really. I think when you're young, you think you make friends when you're young and that's it. But I've made so many friends in the last 15 years, really. It's so amazing. And isn't it lovely as well to see in the UK Crime Book Club, that there's so many real genuine friendships there that have come through books. So yeah, that is a really lovely thing.
Yeah, it's the thing that makes me most proud about the group.
Yeah, I think you should be really proud about that. Actually, it's a genuine community, isn't it? And it's a bit like a secret handshake, because if I'm signing it, somebody comes up and says, "Oh, UK Crime Book Club." So, oh yeah, I know. So it's almost like we're sort of a secret group.
Yeah, a secret group of buds. It's nice.
Super group that's now very big. So
So we've got 4 minutes left.
Oh wow, that's gone quickly.
I know. And I've got so many more questions I could ask you. I'm going to ask you what you've read recently and really enjoyed, but before that, I'm going to sneak in the fact that The Stranger in there is obviously based on your master's in Victorian fiction, isn't it? Because when I read The Stranger Diaries, I genuinely looked him up, the author.
Oh, good.
And I love the story of it, but I was so convinced it was a real and I love Victorian ghost stories, and I was like, how have I missed this author?
Oh, I'm so glad because I did try to get that kind of M.R. Jamesy Victorian ghost story feel to it. And I love telling ghost stories. I must admit, my poor kids, when they were young, I used to tell them ghost stories, so I think they were quite immune. And then one Halloween, they had a Halloween party, and they said, "Oh, Mum, tell ghost stories." So I told one, and these kids couldn't sleep for weeks. Their parents were really cross with me. So, I didn't mean to. Yes. So what have I been reading recently? I was lucky enough to read a proof of Janice Hallett's latest book, and she wrote, I think I mentioned earlier on, she wrote The Appeal, and that's a terrific crime novel told through emails. And this is it's so, I can't really do justice to it, but it's so clever. It's sort of told through they're a group of students on a master's, and they're sort of on their intranet chat, I guess you would describe it. But not all is not what it seems, and it's a very clever novel. So I've just read that, and I absolutely loved that. What else have I read recently? I really enjoyed. I've just read The Wild Swimmers by William Shaw, which was absolutely fantastic. And for the first time, bit later on the scene, Murder Before Evensong by Richard Coles, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, they're all good reads.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's like the best sort of cozy novel, because it's cozy, but there are some dark themes in there as well. And I did an event with Richard recently, and he was really, really nice, so that was good.
Someone else on here has said they'd be up for a Cathbad novel, so it's not just me.
Oh, good. Excellent. Okay, right. I'll be thinking. I've had a few good ideas this evening, actually.
And before we finish off, remind people what they're going to go away and buy. So show off The Man in Black.
Okay, so it is The Man in Black. It's a series of short stories. As I say, some new characters, some new settings, but also a long short story about Ruth and Nelson, which takes place after the events of The Last Remains. A story about Justice Jones growing up. Story about Max Mephisto as a young magician, and a story about Harbinder's first day at Shoreham CID. But as well as that, there's a story about a boy who works in a bookshop who doesn't like books, and about a woman who sees a murder when she's on a ski lift.
And a story from Flint's point of view.
Oh yes, thank you, Kaz. Yeah, can you see? There's Pip there trying to get in the picture. He's playing with my selection of hagstones, which are hanging down there in the background. So if you've ever wanted to know what Flint thinks about Ruth, Kate, Nelson, spoiler alert, he doesn't like him. Cathbad, he does like him. If you ever wanted to know what Flint thinks, that's in here. Flint's Fireside Tale.
Yeah, that was also work genius.
It was very fun to write what Flint thinks about it all, because cats know it all, don't they? But who knows? I mean, Pip knows that we're talking here, so he's trying to get in on the scene.
Well, Terry Pratchett said that, what was it? He said that in ancient times, cats were worshipped as gods and they haven't forgotten it.
No, he's Terry Pratchett's another genius, isn't he? But yeah, they haven't forgotten it. And one of my favourite Egyptian gods is Bastet, the cat god.
And then all that's left to say before we run on for another hour with me asking about the stories, because I could talk to you for ages about that book. It's brilliant. Is to say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Kaz, and thanks everyone who listened. And just basically, again, thanks to you and your dad for starting the UK Crime Book Club, because it's the best.
Ah.